The dice strike stone with a sound so small you could almost miss it. A dry click, then another. Ivory against crystal, and in that little sound, kingdoms begin to loosen from their foundations. No one is shouting yet. That is what makes it worse. The hall is bright, perfumed, crowded with kings, and still the afternoon has the hush of a storm, gathering its breath. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're already inside the hall. The air is warm, heavy. It carries sandalwood smoke, lamp ghee, polished wood, flowers beginning to soften in the heat. And beneath all of it, the very human scent of sweat. So many men in one room. So much silk, so much gold, so much restraint. You stand near one of the great pillars and feel the smooth chill of it at your fingertips. The floor below is so finely worked, it catches the lamplight like still water. Rows of kings sit on carved seats, bracelets flashing when they shift. Elders in white and ochre hold themselves very still. Servants move softly at the edges, barefoot, nearly soundless. At the center, the dice rest in a practiced hand. One throw, a pause, another throw, and each time they fall, the room tightens. This is not a battlefield. No chariot wheels, no blare of war conches, no dust storm of charging elephants. Just a game. Just men seated on cushions. Just voices kept low, because everyone still wants to pretend this is ordinary. It is the ancient version of a family gathering, where everyone has arrived smiling and no one has forgotten anything. You can feel it in the backs of your knees, in your throat, in the way nobody quite exhales. Across the shining floor sits Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, king of the Pandavas, shoulders straight, face composed. He wears the stillness of a man trained from birth to master himself. But stillness is not safety. Not today. Opposite him sits Shakuni of Gandhara, the uncle with the clever fingers and the calm eyes. The dice seem almost eager in his hand. Near him, Duryodhana watches with the fixed attention of a man who has wanted this afternoon for a very long time. Around them are the men who should stop it. Bhishma is here. Drona too. Kripa. Vidura. The blind king Dhritarashtra on his throne, hearing every cast, every breath, every silence. A hall full of wisdom. A hall full of rank. A hall full of men who know the smell of disaster even before the first lamp is lit. And still, the dice keep falling. You hear the little click again. It is almost funny, in a cruel sort of way. The world does not always break with thunder. Sometimes it breaks with excellent manners. Tonight, you are going to walk through this hall slowly. You are going to feel the polished floor under bare feet and the heat pressing down from the lamps. You are going to pass through a palace so beautiful. It hardly seems meant for human beings at all, because this did not begin with dice. It began with wonder. Far from Hastinapura, in Indraprastha, the Pandavas built something impossible. No, built is too plain a word. Something was conjured there out of gratitude, craft, and ambition. A palace raised by Maya, the asura architect, whose skill could make certainty itself stumble. So come away from the dice for a moment, leave the tense hall behind, and travel west with the wind. The road opens under the sun. Dust clings to your ankles. Parrots flash green through banyan shade. Somewhere beyond the fields and riverbanks, beyond villages smelling of grain and smoke, a city gleams, Indraprastha. You arrive at its gates in the late light, when the stone walls are honey gold, and the banners lift lazily in the warm air. Guards stand with spears tipped bright as flame. Traders call from the roadside. Oxen snort. Wheel rims creak. In temple courtyards, bells ring the evening hour, soft and bronze deep. The city is prosperous in the way that makes other people deeply uncomfortable. Granaries full, streets clean, horses sleek, warehouses packed, kitchens fragrant with rice, cardamom, roasted barley, and ghee, every courtyard washed, every threshold marked, every servant moving with the confidence of a household that expects abundance tomorrow too. The good news, your cousins are thriving. The bad news, your other cousins are watching. And at the center of this city stands the assembly hall. You see it first through trees and colonnades, almost unreal in the dusk. Its walls hold light, the way a calm river holds the sky. Crystal catches gold. Gold catches firelight. Jewel-set panels send color gliding across white surfaces so that even the shadows look expensive. You step inside, and the place begins to toy with your senses. What looks like a pool bears your weight. What looks like open floor suddenly shimmers with lotus-filled water. A doorway turns out to be wall. A wall opens into a chamber cool as moonlight. Mechanical birds gleam from jeweled branches. Artificial ponds hold golden lotuses. Polished surfaces reflect lamps until it seems there are stars below your feet as well as above your head. It is magnificent. It is disorienting. And if you are proud, it is a dangerous place to visit in formal silk. You can already sense what will happen. A lifted hem, a misplaced step, a splash. Somewhere, stifled laughter struggling for its life. But that comes soon enough. For now, walk the long hall. Let your hand trail over crystal smooth as still water. Smell jasmine woven into garlands. Smell sandal paste cooling on stone. Hear anklets in the side corridors. Low music from somewhere unseen. The murmur of princes trying very hard to sound unimpressed. No one is unimpressed. Least of all, Duryodhana. He comes into this wonder and sees too much, the gems, the tribute, the effortless authority of the sons of Pandu, the way kings from every direction bow where once they measured, the way this new hall shines as if fortune itself has chosen a side. Then the palace laughs at him, only for a moment, a misstep, a confusion of crystal and water, the kind of mistake a generous room would forgive. This room is not generous. The sound of laughter does not linger in the air very long. It lingers in the chest. So he takes it home with him, all the way back to Hastinapura, across the dust of the road, under the white blaze of day, into the private chambers where humiliation ripens into resolve. Not the clean resolve of warriors meeting in open field. Something quieter, more upholstered, more perfumed. Much worse. An invitation will be sent. A game will be proposed. A righteous king who should refuse will not refuse. And the dice, those little pale creatures, will do what armies have not yet done. So settle more deeply now. Feel the night around you. Feel the fan hum if it's turning nearby. Let the old hall rise again in lamplight and shadow. Before dawn comes to Kurukshetra, before vows are sworn in dust and exile darkens the forest paths, there is this single afternoon waiting. A crystal floor, a handful of ivory, a room full of men who know better. And the first throw is about to fall. Before the dice, before the insult, before any of it, there was a building so beautiful it broke a man's pride. The ground is still warm. You stand where the Pandava forest stood, and the ash has not yet settled into memory. When you step, your sandals press into blackened earth that gives off the faint heat of something only recently surrendered. The air smells wrong, smoke, resin, scorched bark, and underneath it all, that strange, sweet note of sap cooked open by fire. A wind moves through the ruin. It brings no birdsong, only the small dry hiss of embers collapsing somewhere out of sight. Arjuna is there, his bow lowered now, the work of flame and battle behind him. Krishna stands near him with that calm stillness that somehow makes everything around him feel both safer and more dangerous. And out from the edge of smoke, blinking through the heat shimmer, comes Maya. He is not like the court architects you imagine. No tidy little beard, no rolled-up plans under his arm, no polite smile. He looks like someone from older places, someone who knows how to build for beings who are not entirely human and never entirely reasonable. His eyes are sharp, his gratitude is sharper. Arjuna spared him when the forest burned, and Maya has come to repay a debt that men like him do not leave unpaid. He offers service, not gold, not jewels, not horses, a hall, a Sabha so strange and splendid that kings will enter it and forget, for one dangerous moment, that they are mortal. And because the world cannot resist this kind of offer, the thing begins. At first it does not look like greatness. It looks like labor. Oxen pull stone through dust. Carts creak. Men shout over one another in the heat. Hammer strikes, answer. Hammer strikes, all day long. Timber arrives in massive lengths, smelling fresh and green. Slabs of crystal come wrapped in thick cloth and straw. Bronze fittings gleam in the sun. Rare woods, dark and fragrant, are unloaded with the care usually reserved for royal infants. You stand at the edge of the site and watch it rise, not quickly, not all at once. Beauty never comes politely, and this beauty certainly does not. Maya walks among workers like a man hearing music no one else can hear. He points once, and a column is shifted 3 hand widths. He points again, and a pool is dug where no pool should be. He orders gems set not where they are most visible, but where light will find them unexpectedly, in late afternoon, in lamplight, in rain. He builds for surprise. That is the first secret of the hall. It is not meant merely to impress. It is meant to disarm. The days lengthen into months. The heat changes. Dust gives way to the scent of wet earth when the monsoon arrives and drums the half-built roofs. Water runs in channels through the site. Workmen laugh barefoot in mud up to their ankles, carrying stone anyway, because royal schedules do not pause for weather. Then the rains pass, and the sun comes back hard enough to bleach cloth and patience. You feel time moving in your bones. The palace rises. First, the foundations settle deep, steady, impossible, then terraces, then pillars, then walls whose surfaces seem plain until the morning light touches them and the whole thing wakes up in color. Not obvious color, not painted brightness, something subtler. Gold under white, blue inside silver, rose flickering through polished crystal. You catch yourself staring. Everyone does. Maya has built halls before, but this one has a mood. It has intention. The corridors bend in ways that seem natural until you realize you should have reached an outer court already, and somehow you're deeper inside. Windows open where there ought to be walls. Light falls from high places you cannot immediately locate. Pools reflect ceilings that look like sky. And the sound in there, the sound. Footsteps do not behave properly. One step rings sharply, as if struck on stone. The next is soft as moss. Water whispers nearby, though no stream is visible. Somewhere mechanical birds, hidden among jeweled branches, begin to sing. And for a moment, you would swear they are real. Silk rustles, anklets chime. The low murmur of amazed guests gathers beneath the ceiling like incense. At last, the day comes when the work is finished. You enter washed, perfumed, and half-prepared, which is to say, not prepared at all. The first sensation is coolness. Outside, the heat lies on Indraprastha, like a hand on the back of the neck. Inside, the air changes, not cold, just merciful. Stone holds the night within itself. Water moves somewhere unseen. Lotus pools breathe up a damp sweetness. Sandalwood smoke curls from bronze censers. Jasmine hangs from carved balconies. Ghee lamps burn steady in polished niches, their flames multiplied again and again in crystal surfaces until one lamp becomes 20. You are standing in wealth so refined, it no longer needs to announce itself loudly, which of course means it announces itself even louder. Ahead, a floor gleams like a still pond at dawn. Naturally, you stop. So does everyone the first time. The polished crystal is so clear, so lucid, that your body refuses it. Every sane instinct says, water, deep enough to soak silk and dignity. You gather your robes a little. You test the surface with your toes. Solid, perfectly solid. A few attendants pretend not to notice. They are lying. That is the second secret of the hall. It teaches you, gently at first, that your eyes are not in charge here. You walk on. To the right, there appears to be a dry passage lined with pale stone and slender columns. Lovely, safe, a noble route. Someone ahead of you takes it confidently and with one excellent splash disappears to the knee in an actual channel of water, clear as air. Servants rush forward with cloths and lowered eyes. The poor man emerges trying to look as though he had intended a ceremonial foot washing all along. No one believes him. The palace is in a playful mood today, and it is only beginning. You pass gardens laid indoors and outdoors at once, if that makes any sense, which it does not. Trees rise from courtyards open to the sky, but their leaves cast shadows across interior walls. Vines heavy with blossoms spill from terraces and seem to float. Golden lotuses drift in pools bordered by black stone. White lilies open in the shade. The smell is thick and sweet. Jasmine, champaka, wet leaves, lotus, a touch of lamp smoke, and somewhere always sandalwood. Bees wander in, drunk with employment. Peacocks step along parapets as if they personally approved the design. One of them lets out that ridiculous rusty trumpet cry, and the sound bounces off crystal so magnificently that the bird looks startled by its own importance. In another chamber, pillars rise like frozen sunlight. Not plain columns, no, these are faceted, inlaid, alive with captured light. Rubies hold little coals in their depths. Emeralds cool the eye. Sheets of polished stone reflect moving bodies as if the hall were crowded with twins. Every turn gives you another impossible alignment. One corridor framing a garden. The garden framing a pool. The pool reflecting a roof painted like dawn. You begin to understand something. This is not a residence. It is an argument made of architecture. It says the sons of Pandu are no longer merely tolerated princes with good luck and dangerous friends. It says fortune has moved house. It says, if heaven ever wanted an address on earth, it might try here first. And kings notice. They come in from every quarter, east, west, north, south, bringing tribute, opinions, and old resentments hidden beneath ceremony. Their horses snort in the courtyards, elephant bells clink, chariots line the outer roads, perfumed ambassadors glide through the gates in linen and silk, warriors with sun-browned shoulders and jeweled sword hilts stand beneath arches built by an asura and try not to gape. They gape. How could they not? You stand among them and watch their faces. One king is delighted, laughing openly every time the palace tricks him. Another grows suspicious, as if architecture itself might be conspiring against him. One old ruler squints at a wall painting for so long that a servant has to gently guide him away before he bows to it by mistake. A proud young prince spends 10 full breaths avoiding what he thinks is a pool, only to discover he has been inching around a dry patch of floor while everyone behind him politely waits. The hall does not humiliate everyone, only enough to remind them that they are guests in a place governed by other rules. Narada comes too, veena in hand, bright as ever, and he moves through the palace with the easy delight of someone who has seen divine courts and still finds this one worth a smile. He speaks of celestial halls, Indras, Yamas, Varunas, Kuveras, as if laying garlands of comparison at Yudhishthira's feet. The message settles over the gathering like perfume. This Sabha belongs in very grand company. Yudhishthira receives all this with his usual grave gentleness. That is part of why the whole thing lands so hard. If Bhima had built it, people would call it boasting. If Arjuna had built it, people would call it theatrical. But Yudhishthira stands there, calm and modest in white, and the hall seems to say on his behalf what he never would. The kingdom is flourishing. The brothers are united. The gods are near. Try not to choke on it. Then comes the Rajasuya, days of ritual, priests in clean garments, sacred fires, breathing smoke scented with clarified butter and herbs, conch shells sounding at dawn, river water carried in gold vessels, kings seated in rows, Brahmins fed until even the ambitious ones loosen their waistcloths a little. Treasure distributed, in heaps, horses stamping, elephants painted, drums rolling through the courtyards at sunrise and moonrise both. Indraprastha glows. You can smell roasted grain, honey, cardamom, incense, lamp smoke, hot metal from the kitchens, garlands wilting slowly in the afternoon heat. The city is swollen with guests and self-importance. Every corridor of the Maya Sabha shines with polished effort. Krishna is honored first among those assembled. Not everyone enjoys that. Shishupala certainly does not. And he spends his stored-up rage all at once. His words crack across the hall, harsh enough to make even seasoned courtiers blink. But there is a limit to how far a man can run on hatred before he runs straight into his end. Krishna rises, the discus flashes, Shishupala falls, and just like that, celebration and dread sit down beside one another and share a cushion. Even that does not dim the hall. If anything, it deepens it. This is no fragile pleasure pavilion. This is a place where honor, power, worship, envy, and ruin can all fit under one roof. You feel it now, a current beneath the beauty. Then Duryodhana arrives fully into the moment. He has seen wealth before. He was raised in Hastinapura. Gold does not shock him. Fine stone does not impress him easily. Processions, tribute, musicians, jeweled women with trays of flowers, standards snapping above courtyards. None of this is new. But this hall is not merely richer than what he knows. It is stranger, freer, more confident. It has the insolent ease of success that did not ask permission, and everywhere he looks, the sons of Pandu seem at home in it. Bhima strides through the corridors as if he could uproot a pillar for amusement and set it back straight. Arjuna moves under the crystal light like a man who has spoken with gods and come back without losing his appetite. Nakula and Sahadeva glide among horses, guests, and protocol with polished grace. Draupadi, queen of this impossible place, seems made for it. Her dark hair is perfumed with flowers. Her garments whisper over shining floors. Jewels rest at her throat and wrists, but somehow it is her composure people notice first. And Yudhishthira sits in the center of it all, serene. You can almost hear Duryodhana's thoughts tightening. He walks the hall with attendants behind him, and envy beginning to wake like a snake in warm stone. At first, he is only measuring, counting, comparing pillars, treasures, guest lists, allegiances, who bowed to whom, who lingered near Krishna, who smiled too easily at the Pandavas. Then the palace itself intervenes. Ahead lies a surface clear and gleaming. Water, surely. Duryodhana gathers his robes and steps carefully, dry. A servant lowers his head so fast you know his mouth is doing dangerous things behind that expression. Duryodhana moves on. He sees what appears to be a continuation of crystal floor, smooth and harmless. This time, he trusts it. Why should he not? A prince cannot spend the entire day negotiating with masonry. He steps. The world disappears to the waist in cold water. The splash cracks through the chamber. For one bright, merciless second, everything stops. You can hear droplets strike in stone. You can smell lotus water and wet silk. Duryodhana rises at once, drenched, his fine garments clinging, jewels flashing stupidly through the sheets of water running off him. His face changes color so quickly, it is almost impressive. Attendants rush, cloth appears. Hands hover, not daring too much. Somewhere nearby, someone makes a sound that begins as a cough and dies as a laugh. Then the laughter really comes. Maybe from servants, maybe from companions, maybe from women in the gallery, maybe from Draupadi herself, seeing the proud Kaurava prince hauled from a pool by his own confusion. Different mouths will remember it differently, but laugh they do. Not long, not wildly, just enough for a man like Duryodhana. You are standing close enough to feel the temperature of the moment change. The hall is still cool, still fragrant, still radiant with reflected light, but inside him, heat has become something else. Not the clean heat of embarrassment, not even anger yet, something denser, something that wants to be fed. He tries to recover. Of course he does. Any prince would. He straightens, he accepts dry cloth, he pretends the incident was small, but the palace is not done. A little later, he mistakes a door for open passage and nearly walks into polished surface hard enough to remind him that royal foreheads are not made of iron. He turns too sharply to hide that and avoids another harmless floor section as if it were a pond. Behind him, men who would rather face cavalry than amusement lower their eyes and study their own sandals with heroic concentration. The hall has found his exact weakness, pride with witnesses, and because fate enjoys efficiency, witnesses are abundant. The smell of wet silk follows him faintly for a while. Not much, just enough to make a cruel memory stronger. Sunlight through the upper lattice catches droplets still clinging to the hem of his garment. Somewhere, a mechanical bird sings again. absurdly cheerful. A peacock cries from the terrace, like an old woman gossiping. The entire palace seems a little rude. By evening the lamps are lit. Gold flames tremble in crystal bowls. Music drifts from inner chambers. Guests recline on cushions and praise the feast. The scent of cardamom milk and roasted sesame lingers after supper. Outside, the night air finally softens. Inside, polished floors hold the day's coolness. But Duryodhana carries no coolness within him now. Only that laughter. You know the kind that keeps repeating later, when the road is long and no one is speaking. The kind that returns while unfastening jewelry, while washing, while lying awake under embroidered covers. The kind that changes shape. First it says they laughed at me. Then it says they always laugh at me. Then, more dangerously, it says they have taken what should have been mine. That is how humiliation fattens itself, not in public, in private. The next morning, the hall is as beautiful as ever. Lotus is open. Servants polish what was already shining. Incense rises in pale ribbons. Courtiers move like pieces in a well-played game. Nothing in the architecture has changed. Everything in Duryodhana has. You stand in a high corridor and watch him one last time as he looks back across the Maya Sabha, at the crystal brightness, at the impossible pools, at the wealth, at the gathered kings, at the easy splendor of his cousin's success. He is not confused now. He understands perfectly what this place means, and understanding it hurts worse than the fall. Soon he will leave Indraprastha. Soon wheels will grind over the long road to Hastinapura. Dust will rise behind his chariot. The silk will be dry by then. His face will be composed. His voice, when he finally uses it, will be quiet. Quiet is worse. For now, stay here a moment longer. You are inside the palace that should not exist. Lamps glow in niches of crystal. Water shines where stone pretends to be water and stone pretends to be sky. Flowers breathe sweetness into the cool air. Somewhere far down a corridor, a sandal scrapes, a servant murmurs, a jewel catches flame light and throws it blue across the wall. And in the center of all this beauty, almost invisible, the first hard seed of disaster has taken root. And then the guest of honor arrives, and the palace, that gorgeous, impossible palace, does exactly what palaces do. It reveals who you are. The sun is higher now. Heat presses on the courtyards outside, but inside the Maya Sabha, the air stays cool, touched by water and stone, and some trick of craft too fine to name. Duryodhana walks in with the careful dignity of a prince who has already decided he will not be impressed. That decision lasts perhaps 3 breaths. You can see it happen. The eyes move first, then the jaw, then the shoulders go just a little tight beneath the silk. Everywhere he looks, the hall gives him too much to process at once. Pillars shining like captured dawn, ceilings painted so deep they feel open to the sky, floors that gleam with the innocent malice of a cobra in sunlight. He keeps walking. What else can he do? Servants bow, courtiers make way. Bracelets chime softly as attendants pass with trays of betel, fruits, cool drinks scented with rose and cardamom. Somewhere, a fountain laughs to itself. Duryodhana does not laugh. He turns down a corridor lined with crystal panels. They reflect him back in fragments. Arm here, crown there, face cut into bright pieces by light. For a moment it looks as though the palace is breaking him up and handing him back unfinished. You are right there with him now, close enough to hear the whisper of his garments over polished stone. He slows before what appears to be a pool. The surface shines, blue-green. Still, lotus petals drift over it. He gathers his robe slightly, preparing to step around the water. His foot comes down. Solid floor, not damp, not slick. Dry crystal, hard as truth, and twice as rude. A servant nearby lowers his eyes so quickly, it almost counts as mercy. Duryodhana drops the hem of his robe, as if he had meant to do that all along. Of course he had, naturally. A prince may inspect the hem of his own garment whenever he wishes. Very important royal business. He walks on. The hall does not forgive. A little farther ahead stands an open doorway, or what looks like one. Beyond it seems to lie another chamber filled with pale gold light. Duryodhana turns toward it with confidence restored. At last, a plain, ordinary door. Blessings upon plain, ordinary doors. He reaches out. His fingers meet wall. Not even a soft wall. Painted stone. Cool, flat, immovable. The sort of wall that has never once apologized to anyone. The sound is small. Just a tap. But in a silent corridor, a tap can become an announcement. One guard coughs into his hand. Another studies the ceiling with desperate spiritual commitment. Somewhere behind a carved pillar, a maid bites the inside of her cheek to keep from smiling. The palace keeps smiling for her. Duryodhana draws back his hand. The skin between his brows tightens. Color rises in his face, then drains. He stares at the painted doorway as if pure hatred might make it useful. It does not. The smell of sandalwood hangs sweet and thick in the air. A garland of jasmine droops from a silver bowl. Water moves somewhere unseen, its sound soft as mockery. He continues deeper. Now the tricks come faster. A passage that looks narrow opens wide when approached. A floor that appears broken lies smooth beneath the foot. A set of steps seems to rise, and instead runs flat as a ribbon through the next chamber. Light bends in strange ways. Gemstones set into the walls catch flame from distant lamps and scatter red, blue, green across the marble, so that whole corridors look wet when they are dry and dry when they hide water. You would laugh too if it were happening to someone else. That is the uncomfortable part. There is something almost childlike in the palace's mischief. It keeps inviting certainty and then slapping it away. It says, "Go on then. Be sure. Be very sure. See how that works out." Duryodhana is a warrior raised in courts and training grounds, in camps where danger at least has the courtesy to look dangerous. A spear is a spear. A rival prince is a rival prince. Mud is mud. This hall has the manners of a dream. He comes into a long chamber where the floor ahead glistens like open water. This time, he does not trust it. Sensible. Progress even. He stops. He studies the surface from 3 different angles. He leans slightly, testing the reflection. A servant waiting near a pillar becomes intensely interested in a tray of flowers. Duryodhana lifts his robes again, more carefully now, and takes a cautious step. Stone, perfectly dry, not even damp enough to justify the effort. His mouth hardens. He lowers the fabric in one sharp motion. If humiliation had a sound, it might be silk snapping back against the shin. A few men behind him murmur to one another. Nothing clear. Nothing he can answer. That is almost worse. You feel the warmth in the room and the coolness underfoot. The strange mixed sense of lotus water, polished cedar, key lamps, and the faint iron tang of a prince's wounded pride. He keeps moving, slower now, watching every surface. The palace notices. At the far side of the chamber lies what appears to be A pale marble court, smooth and inviting. Sunlight from a high screen falls across it in trembling gold. A line of silver fish seems painted below the surface, but so many things here only seem. Duryodhana has learned, or thinks he has. He looks once, twice, decides. Dry floor. He steps forward with full weight. The world disappears beneath him. The splash cracks through the chamber like a struck drum. Cold water leaps to his waist, then his chest. Silk darkens instantly and clings like accusation. Jewels drag at his collar. One sandal vanishes. His crown tilts. For one stunned second, he is not prince, heir, rival, guest. He is simply a man in a pool he did not know was there. And the hall explodes. Not loudly at first. First comes that helpless sharp inhale people make when disaster is too perfect. Then the burst. Laughter from attendants, laughter from guards, laughter half swallowed, half spilled, some of it shocked, some delighted, some cruel, some honest in the way only surprise can be, and somewhere among it, clearer than the rest, brighter, impossible to miss, women laughing. Draupadi is there with her companions, and whether she laughs first or only joins what has already begun hardly matters now. It reaches him the same way, like a slap, like hot metal laid against the inside of the chest. You can almost feel the cold water in his clothes, heavy silk clinging to his thighs, wet hair at the temple, gold bangles slick against skin. The pool smells faintly of lotus and stone. A petal sticks absurdly to his shoulder as if the palace has decorated him for the occasion. For one terrible heartbeat, even Bhima laughs. It is the booming kind, impossible to hide, big enough to shake a room. Arjuna turns away too late. The twins are no help at all. Even servants who will later swear they were nowhere nearby are suddenly very busy, failing not to grin. Humor has a sharp edge when it points upward. Duryodhana rises out of the pool in silence. That silence changes everything. Water runs from his sleeves. Droplets strike the marble in a steady rhythm. His chest rises once, falls once. His face settles into something composed and pale and terrible. Servants rush forward with cloths. Someone stammers an apology. Someone else gestures frantically for dry garments. A eunuch nearly slips in his panic and catches himself on a pillar with the tragic dignity of a man who knows this is not his day either. No one knows where to look. If anger had come, the room could have answered it. Anger is noisy. Anger gives instructions. This is quieter. Duryodhana takes the offered cloth, but barely seems to feel it. He wipes his face once, hands the cloth back. Water still drips from the edge of his robe. A thread of it runs across the floor and disappears into a groove carved to carry away what the palace itself has caused. He looks toward Draupadi. He looks toward the brothers. He looks around the hall that has tricked him, drenched him, and laughed. No shouting, no curse, only that stillness. You are standing in the chamber when the mood turns. It is almost physical. The air that had sparkled a moment ago seems to tighten. The sweetness of jasmine becomes too sweet. The cool marble beneath your feet feels unfriendly now. Even the fountains sound different, as if the water itself knows it has gone too far. A change of garments is brought. Duryodhana goes with attendants into a side chamber, and the corridor outside fills with the embarrassed bustle of recovery. Wet footprints gleam briefly, then vanish under cloth. Perfumed oil is offered, fresh silk, a new sash. A servant dives under a bench to rescue the missing sandal and emerges looking as though he has personally offended the moon. Inside, they dry the prints. Outside, the palace keeps shining. When he returns, every fold is correct again. Crown straight, jewels in place, robe immaculate. Only the eyes are different. They have gone flat. You have seen men look like that on training grounds after being struck where no armor covers. Not bleeding, not broken, just changed. The tour continues because ceremony is a machine, and machines do not stop just because a human heart has cracked somewhere inside them. He sees more halls, more treasure, more kings honoring Yudhishthira, more signs that his cousins are not merely thriving but radiant with legitimacy. Tribute glitters in heaps, gold from distant lands, ivory carved thin as leaves, elephant tusks, fine wool from mountain kingdoms, horses with shining flanks, chests of gems, priests moving in calm authority, musicians filling the air with vina strings and low drum beats. Everywhere, abundance. Everywhere, witnesses. And every witness carries, whether they admit it or not, the memory of that splash. By the time evening settles over Indraprastha, lamps have been lit in bronze rows. Their reflections multiply in crystal walls until it looks like stars have come indoors. The scent of cooked rice, clarified butter, roasted grains, and sweet cakes drifts from the kitchens. Courtiers dine, priests bless, music rises. Duryodhana eats little. He says less. Night folds itself over the city, warm and dark and breathing. Somewhere peacocks cry from the gardens. Somewhere horses stamp in their stalls. Somewhere laughter still trails through a servant's quarters, softer now, repeated and imitated. A hand lifted to avoid imaginary water. A shocked splash. A face gone rigid. Embarrassment is a story people love to retell. He does not sleep much. Before dawn, preparations begin to leave. The chariot waits in the courtyard. Wheels, rimmed bright, horses restless in the cool blue hour. Mist hangs low over the watered gardens. The road east lies long and dusty beyond the gates. Duryodhana mounts without flourish. No backward glance this time. The wheels begin to turn. You ride with him out of Indraprastha as the city falls behind. Its shining halls, its banners, its impossible pride. Morning smells of damp earth, horse sweat, neem smoke from cooking fires just waking in roadside villages. Hooves strike packed soil. Harness rings jingle. Dust rises and settles on skin. For a long while, he says nothing at all. Beside him sits Karna for part of the road, fierce and loyal, his face dark with shared offense. Others ride near and then fall back. But silence leads the procession. Humiliation changes shape when given distance. At first, it is heat in the face. Then, a knot in the stomach. Then, mile by mile, wheel turn by wheel turn, it hardens. The countryside slips past in bands of green and brown, fields bright with young grain, mango groves, dry stretches where only scrub survives, river crossings where the air cools suddenly and smells of mud and reeds. Villagers stop and stare as the royal train passes. White cranes lift from the water and wheel away. Inside the prince, the splash keeps happening. Again, the step, again the fall, again the laughter. By noon, the sun is harsh enough to flatten all shadows. Sweat darkens the horses' necks. Dust settles in the folds of silk. A servant offers water from a skin cooled in wet cloth. Duryodhana drinks and hands it back. Still no wasted words, but the silence is no longer empty. It is busy. You can almost hear the thoughts taking order. Not random pain now, not just shame. Something more useful than shame. Something with direction. He thinks of the wealth he saw, the kings assembled under Yudhishthira's authority, the ease with which those brothers moved through splendor, the way Bhima laughed, the way Draupadi laughed, the way everyone saw. By the time the sun leans westward, embarrassment has become grievance. Grievance becomes certainty. Certainty becomes hunger. He reaches Hastinapura with dust on his skin and iron in his heart. The old city receives him with its own familiar smells: elephant yards, hot stone, river wind from the Ganga, smoke from evening offerings, old wood, oil, the lived-in scent of a court that does not glitter like Indraprastha, but has known power for generations. Servants hurry, trumpets sound, doors open. He answers formal greetings as required. He does not linger with his father, not yet. Instead, he goes where wounded pride always goes when it wants help becoming dangerous. To Shakuni. The uncle's chambers are cooler than the outer halls, shaded and close, with carpets underfoot, and low lamps already lit against the evening dim. The place smells of sandal paste, old wool, and the faint dry scent of ivory, kept often in hand. Dice are somewhere nearby. You feel that before you see them. Shakuni looks up as Duryodhana enters. He sees the face, the set mouth, the eyes that have gone from injured to intent, and because he is Shakuni, he understands immediately that something valuable has happened. He does not crowd the moment. He lets the silence breathe, lets the prince sit, lets anger arrive dressed as composure. At last, Duryodhana tells it, not with tears, not with a child's complaint. Worse, calmly, he speaks of the hall, the wealth, the tributes, the authority gathered around Yudhishthira like a second crown. He speaks of the tricks of the palace, the misstep, the pool, the laughter. He says enough. He does not need to say all of it. Men like Shakuni hear the rest anyway. You sit in that room and feel the air change as the telling goes on. Outside, evening bells ring from some distant shrine. A conch sounds over the city walls. In the corridor, a servant passes with a tray and hurries on, sensing better than to linger. Shakuni listens with half-lidded eyes and still hands. Then he smiles, not broadly, not kindly, just enough. He begins to speak in that smooth, unhurried way of his, as if discussing weather or the movement of cattle or some harmless little matter no one should lose sleep over. He reminds Duryodhana of an old weakness in a good man. He speaks of Yudhishthira and his devotion to the gaming board. He speaks of honor and invitations and the difficulty of refusal among kings. He speaks of a contest where strength of arm means nothing. No swords, no armies, no battlefield dust, only a hall, a summons, ivory dice, striking stone. The sound seems to arrive before the dice themselves, as if fate has already tossed them somewhere in the dark. Duryodhana listens. In Indraprastha, the palace made him small. In this room, with his uncle's voice curling through lamplight, he begins to feel large again. That is the danger. By the time he rises to leave, the decision has settled. He will not forget the laughter. He will answer it. Night deepens over Hastinapura. Oil lamps tremble in their niches. Far off, the river moves under starlight, black and slow. In a quiet chamber, an old gambler turns a piece of ivory between his fingers. In another, a prince lies awake and watches anger become plan. And very far away, in the shining city of Indraprastha, the palace still glows. Its crystal floors cool under moonlight. Its pools lie still. Its painted doors wait politely for the next hand that trusts them. The wet robes dry, the laughter fades, but something has already started moving, something with teeth. By dawn, Hastinapura feels different, not louder, if anything, quieter. The palace servants pad through corridors with lowered eyes. Brass trays barely clink. Even the pigeons on the courtyard eaves seem to coo more softly, as if they know a prince has come home carrying humiliation like a fever. You can smell old stone still cool from the night, lamp smoke curling in the passageways, ghee from the kitchens, and under it all that dry northern dust that gets into everything. Duryodhana does not storm. That would have been easier. He walks through his father's city in silence, his face set, his robes changed, his hair combed, every outward sign restored. But his stillness is the kind that makes experienced servants suddenly remember urgent tasks elsewhere. A crashing man can be handled. A quiet man with a decision in him is another matter. He goes straight to Shakuni. His uncle is already awake. Of course he is. Shakuni sits near an open lattice where the morning light falls in pale bars across the floor. He has a cup of something bitter beside him. In one hand, loose as breath, he turns a die of ivory between his fingers, not tossing it, just feeling its corners. The little cube flashes cream white, then dull, then white again. You stand in that room with the prince, and the first thing you notice is the smell. Sandalwood ash, old wool, a trace of clove, and the faint animal scent of ivory warmed by skin. Shakuni lifts his eyes. He does not ask what happened in Indraprastha. He knows enough already. News travels on servants' feet faster than royal chariots. A prince stepping into a pool in full silk is not the kind of thing a household keeps to itself. But Shakuni is too clever to begin with comfort. He lets Duryodhana speak, and Duryodhana does, though not in a rush. He tells it in pieces. The crystal that looked like water, the water that looked like crystal, the false doors, the open doors, the attendants, the laughter. He speaks of Yudhishthira's greatness as if the word itself tastes bitter. He speaks of treasures from every quarter of the earth heaped in one city, of kings bowing, of Krishna honored before them all, of Bhima's strength, Arjuna's fame, Draupadi's pride, and that impossible hall, shining like something no human ruler should own. He does not say, "I am ashamed." He does not need to. It hangs in the room anyway. Shakuni listens without blinking much. That is one of the unnerving things about him. While other men react, he absorbs. He lets the pain settle, lets it ripen. When Duryodhana is done, the room sits very still. Outside, somewhere in the courtyards, a horse snorts and stamps. From a distant shrine comes the soft bell note of morning worship. The sound enters, trembles, disappears. Then Shakuni begins. He reminds the prince of a simple truth. Men who cannot be defeated by force may yet be undone by appetite. He speaks of Yudhishthira, the righteous, Yudhishthira, the generous, Yudhishthira, who performs sacrifice correctly, greets sages properly, and speaks the measured word at the measured time. All true. Then he smiles, thin as thread, and adds the rest. Yudhishthira loves dice. Not wisely, not casually. Loves them. The board, the challenge, the promise that the next throw might restore what the last throw took. The little sting of uncertainty, the honorable excuse of saying yes because a king must not refuse. That is the crack in the wall, and Shakuni knows it. Duryodhana's anger, which had been pacing like a tiger in a cage, suddenly stops and looks up. No battle, Shakuni says. No siege, no arrows blackening the sky. Why trouble with all that when Yudhishthira can be invited to ruin himself? Call it sport, Call it courtesy, call it family amusement beneath polished beams, while elders watch and pretend not to notice the pit opening under everyone's feet. The idea enters the room like a cool wind, terrible, elegant, exactly suited to the kind of destruction Shakuni prefers. You can feel the shift. Duryodhana had come here burning. Now he begins to harden. Fire turns into iron. He asks what if Yudhishthira refuses. Shakuni nearly laughs, not loudly, just that little exhale of a man amused by the thought of a fish refusing water. He says that among kings, a challenge carries its own chain. Dress it in courtesy, send it from the throne, call it friendly, and Yudhishthira will come. He may know the game is dangerous. He may feel the bad road under his feet, but honor can lead a man where greed alone could never drag him. And as for the play itself, well, Shakuni's fingers close over the die. He has spent a lifetime with cubes of ivory and bone. He knows their weight, their obedience, the delicious way chance can be taught manners. The man was born for many things. Unfortunately for everyone else, one of them was this. Duryodhana leans forward. Now the plan needs a king, not a warrior king, a father, a blind old father whose love for his son is stronger than his fear of consequences. So they go to Dhritarashtra. The blind king sits in his chamber, surrounded by the familiar richness of rule. Heavy fabrics, carved sandalwood, cool metal vessels, the faint medicinal smell of oil rubbed into old limbs, incense trailing upward in lazy blue lines. He cannot see the room, but he knows it by touch and scent and sound. The rustle of silk tells him who has entered. The pause before someone speaks tells him more. You stand near the doorway as Duryodhana and Shakuni bow. Dhritarashtra hears his son's breathing, hears the injury under the control. A father learns that music. He asks what troubles him, and Duryodhana pours out his misery with more heat now, because he has found an audience certain to ache on his behalf. He speaks of the Pandavas' wealth, of the assembly hall beyond compare, of kings paying tribute to Yudhishthira as if he were already emperor of the earth, of his own spirit shrinking in that place. He says he cannot bear it, not the prosperity, not the mockery, not the sense that the sons of Pandu are rising, while he, eldest in the Kuru house at Hastinapura, must smile and applaud. Dhritarashtra listens with his head lowered. He knows this tone too. Jealousy in a beloved child has its own pulse. He tries, weakly at first, to soothe him. He speaks of patience, of time, of family, of shared glory, the sort of gentle words old men reach for when they already know gentleness will fail. Duryodhana answers with despair sharpened into threat. If he cannot bring the Pandavas down, he says, life itself has become tasteless. It is a brutal thing to place before a father. Shakuni waits exactly long enough. Then he slides the remedy into the silence. A game, merely a game. Let Yudhishthira be invited. Let the princes gather in the hall. Let there be friendly sport among kin. If fortune favors one side, who can blame fortune? If Yudhishthira enjoys the board, as everyone knows he does, where is the offense? Dhritarashtra stiffens. He's blind, not foolish. He can hear the serpent moving in the grass. He knows Shakuni plays to win, not to pass an afternoon. He knows his son's heart is darkened. He knows this invitation will not be innocent. The knowledge sits in his chest like a stone. For a moment, just a moment, he resists. He says it may bring discord. That is the word old kings use when they mean catastrophe, but are not ready to taste the full bitterness of it. Shakuni answers smoothly. No, no, quite the opposite. Recreation among cousins, formal hospitality, the easing of tension, a little play beneath supervision. Surely the elders will be present. Surely nothing improper can occur with Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Vidura in the hall. That part is almost funny. Almost, because if you have ever watched a room full of respectable men become furniture, you know how dangerous that reassurance really is. The air feels thick now, warm from lamps and bodies. Somewhere nearby, a fly worries the edge of a fruit tray. Dhritarashtra's fingers grip the carved arms of his seat. He asks for Vidura. Of course he does. Even now, even with the pit opening, he reaches for the one man who will say the thing no one once said. Vidura comes quickly. Wise Vidura, born of the same bloodline, sharp-eyed where the king is blind, carrying truth around the court like a lamp no one enjoys standing near. His footsteps are measured, his clothing plain by palace standards. He smells faintly of clean linen and the dust of records rooms. Dhritarashtra tells him the proposal. Vidura's answer is immediate. Do not do this. He does not wrap it in perfume. He warns the king that dice bring quarrel, that envy is already inflamed, that a game between these cousins is no game at all. He tells him plainly that Duryodhana is steering the house toward ruin. He urges restraint with the kind of courage that gets a man hated at court and remembered by heaven. Duryodhana cannot bear it. He flares, says Vidura always favors the sons of Pandu, says every warning is really an insult, says counsel is useless if it only blocks a father from helping his own son. Dhritarashtra sits between them, blind eyes open to darkness, listening to the two futures laid before him. One is painful now and safer later. The other is easier now and disastrous later. He chooses like many weak men choose. He asks for the hall to be prepared. That is all. No thunder, no crack in the earth. Just one order in a tired old voice. And the whole kingdom tilts. You feel it even if no one else in the room admits it. The servants summoned. The scribes called. The quiet bustle beginning in outer chambers. Cushions shaken, lamps trimmed, polished floors swept. Disaster in royal houses often arrives with excellent housekeeping. Vidura is told to carry the invitation. He does not want to. Every line of him knows what this errand means. But he serves the throne, and the throne has spoken. So he bows, though it costs him. The invitation is composed with exquisite politeness. Words of affection, words of kinship, words like garlands hung over a doorway leading to a pit. Yudhishthira, beloved among cousins, is invited to Hastinapura to enjoy the newly prepared hall and join in a friendly game of dice. The king desires the pleasure of his presence. The family longs for reunion. There will be welcome, honor, and play. Such beautiful lies. The scribe scratches them onto prepared material with a reed pen while oil lamps tremble nearby. Ink smells metallic and earthy. Sand is dusted to set the lines. A seal is pressed. The thing looks harmless enough to tuck into a fold of silk. Shakuni watches the drafting with deep satisfaction. Duryodhana watches like a starving man being promised a feast. Vidura watches as if he has been asked to carry a cobra in a basket and pretend it contains flowers. By late afternoon, the chariot is ready. The horses are brushed till they shine. Harness rings glint. The sun leans westward, turning palace walls honey gold. Heat rises from the road in wavering lines. Vidura mounts with the invitation secured, and the wheels begin to roll toward Indraprastha. You ride with him. The city falls away. Then the fields. Dust coats the hems of garments. The smell changes mile by mile. Hot earth, grain drying in sheaves. River damp, where the road dips low. Smoke from village cook fires. Flowering creepers near wells. Parrots shriek from banyan branches. Monkeys scatter at the sound of wheels. At dusk, the sky becomes copper, then rose, then a bruised violet. Vidura says little. Sometimes he closes his eyes, not to sleep, but to endure. Sometimes he looks ahead with the face of a man, measuring the distance to an unavoidable storm. He knows Yudhishthira, knows the trouble of him, not wickedness, never that. But virtue can have hinges. It can swing open in bad weather. Yudhishthira believes too deeply in the obligations of kings. If summoned formally, he will feel compelled. If challenged, he will feel bound. If seated before a board, he will feel the old pull in his blood. A weakness does not stop being a weakness because it lives inside a good man. Night on the road is cooler, blessedly so. The horse's breath turns soft and regular. Crickets start up in the grasses. Somewhere beyond the darkness, water moves over stones. The stars come out one by one above the plain, bright enough to make the world feel watched. By the next day, Indraprastha rises ahead. Even from a distance, it looks like confidence made visible. Towers catch the sun. White walls gleam. Standards lift and snap in the breeze. The road broadens. Traders pass with carts full of dyed cloth, sesame, copper vessels, baskets of mangoes, jars sealed in wax. The city smells of prosperity, clean stone washed at dawn, jasmine on women's braids, horses well fed, incense from shrines, fried sweets somewhere nearby, making even solemn men a little less solemn. Vidura is received with honor. How could he not be? He is elder, kinsman, counselor, beloved. But his face sobers the welcome. He is brought to Yudhishthira. The eldest Pandava sits in his hall with that grave stillness of his, the stillness of a man who always seems to be weighing himself, even while listening to others. Around him, the life of the court moves in graceful order. Bhima broad and restless. Arjuna, bright as a drawn bow, kept at ease. Nakula and Sahadeva, precise and attentive. Courtiers in fine cotton. Perfume in the air, light striking polished floors. You stand just behind Yudhishthira as Vidura presents the summons. The material crackles softly as it is opened. Yudhishthira reads. Nothing in the message is rude, nothing overtly threatening. That is the brilliance of it. Courtesy all the way down. But he knows. You can see it in the tiny pause at the corner of his mouth, in the way his fingers hold the invitation a heartbeat longer than needed, in the shadow that passes through his eyes. He asks Vidura what lies behind this. Vidura answers as far as he can without disobedience. He says the game has been arranged. He says Shakuni will play. He says he advised against it. He says in every careful word available to him, danger waits in Hastinapura. The room tightens. Bhima's anger arrives first, quick as monsoon thunder. He wants no part of it. You can almost hear his knuckles thinking about somebody's jaw. Arjuna too is troubled, though quieter. The twins exchange glances sharp as knife edges. And Yudhishthira does what men like him always do when trapped between wisdom and duty. He reaches for duty. He says a king invited by elders cannot refuse. He says a challenge to dice, once offered in proper form, is difficult for a kshatriya to decline. He says he knows the game is dangerous, says it almost like a confession. Yet he will go. There it is, the jaw setting, the fatal calm. You feel it in your own body, that awful moment when someone steps toward the very thing he ought to flee because every piece of his honor has been trained in the wrong direction. Outside, the fountains of Indraprastha murmur in their basins. A breeze stirs the curtains. Somewhere in the courtyard, a peacock lets out a cry that sounds, for no good reason at all, like a warning. No one laughs now. Preparations begin. Travel chests are brought out. Servants hurry. Wheels are inspected. Horses selected. News moves through the palace in low voices, passing from handmaidens to guards to cooks to stable boys, until the whole shining city seems to know that the sons of Pandu are going to Hastinapura for a game. Just a game, just family, just a few throws of ivory on polished stone. By evening, the light has turned amber across the terraces. The famous palace glows again, innocent as moonlit water, deceptive as ever. Yudhishthira stands for a while, looking west, where the road lies. You stand near enough to hear his breath. He has already said yes. And far away, in Hastinapura, an old gambler touches a die and smiles into the dark. The hall is ready. The elders are seated. The dice are warm in Shakuni's palm. And Yudhishthira, the man they call Dharmaraja, the king of righteousness, sits down to play. Morning has burned into afternoon by the time everyone is in place. The light in Hastinapura's assembly hall falls through high latticed windows in pale gold bars. Incense curls upward from bronze stands, sandalwood and resin, and a little camphor, sweet enough to seem holy. It cannot hide the other smells. Human heat, silk kept too long in closed chests, oil from warriors' hair, the faint, dry scent of old stone. You are standing near the edge of the hall, not among kings, not among servants, somewhere in that invisible place where witnesses live. The floor has been polished until it catches every movement. Men shift, bracelets click, rings flash, and the sound travels farther than it should. No one is comfortable, not really. Bhishma sits stern and white-haired, broad as an old banyan trunk, even in age. Drona is near him, face still, beard neat, eyes lowered more often than raised. Kripa watches like a man listening for thunder. Vidura looks as if he has swallowed a coal. Dhritarashtra, blind king, sits on the throne with both hands gripping the arms, as though wood can do the seeing for him. And in the center, where all glances keep returning, Shakuni rolls the dice once across his knuckles. Soft ivory taps against bone. That tiny sound, it somehow reaches everywhere. Yudhishthira has come dressed simply for a king. Fine cloth, yes. Jewels enough for dignity, not vanity. He sits straight-backed, composed, grave. You would think he had come to settle tribute accounts. You would think he had come to listen to petitions. Only his fingers betray him. They flex once on his knee, then stillness. Across from him, Shakuni looks almost relaxed. The old Gandhara prince has the loose ease of a man beginning his favorite pastime. His shoulders are soft. His smile never quite becomes a smile. He names the game as friendly. He names it sport. He wraps poison in courtesy so gently you could mistake it for perfume. Duryodhana sits close enough to enjoy every breath of it. He is splendid today. Dark silk, gold armlets, a chest bright with gems, all arranged with the care of someone who wants to look untroubled. It does not work. His eyes are too bright. His stillness is too careful. Humiliation has dried out inside him and become a sharp thing. The formalities begin. A challenge offered. A challenge accepted. Stakes agreed. Shakuni will cast on Duryodhana's behalf. There is a murmur at that, because everyone knows what it means. Not openly, not in words, but the murmur comes anyway. A little rippling unease, moving through the hall like wind through dry grass. Yudhishthira hears it. He goes on. You can feel the moment slipping, not with a crash, with a glide. The first wager is wealth, gold from the treasury, measured, vast, enough to roof temples and feed cities and line chariot wheels with shining rims. Yudhishthira names it calmly. Shakuni answers with ease and casts. The dice skip across the polished floor. Click, spin, settle. Shakuni wins. It happens so quickly, the mind refuses it. Surely that was only the beginning. Surely beginnings are harmless. Surely kings lose a first throw all the time and smile and recover and move on. A few men do smile, thin smiles, the sort worn by people who hope normalcy can be forced into existence by showing their teeth. Servants mark the loss. Gold gone. No one rises. No one objects. The game has only begun. The next wager is jewels. Necklaces from conquered kings, pearls from southern coasts, rubies dark as pomegranate seeds, sapphires cool as river water in shade, uncut stones still carrying a little of the mountain in them. You can almost imagine them, piled in carved chests, glowing under lamp flame back in Indraprastha. Shakuni listens, nods, casts. The dice sound louder now. Perhaps they are not louder. Perhaps the room is simply learning how to listen. Again, he wins. This time, the silence lasts longer. Duryodhana does not laugh, not yet. He breathes out through his nose and glances sideways at Karna, who sits nearby like a blade kept sheathed for ceremony and battle alike. Karna's face gives little away, but satisfaction flickers there, brief and hot. Dushasana, less disciplined and born without the gift of restraint, shifts with delight. He cannot quite hide. You smell ghee from the lamps, warm wax, the dry metallic scent of polished weapons carried by guards at the doors. Outside, somewhere distant, a conch sounds for some temple rite entirely unrelated to this disaster. The ordinary world goes on. That is one of the strangest parts. Inside, the game continues. Yudhishthira stakes more treasure. Cups of worked gold, elephant tusks carved with scenes of hunts and marriages, carpets from western lands, fine garments, rare woods. The kind of wealth that accumulates around long success, like honey around a spoon. Lost, he stakes chariots next, not one or two. Lines of them, war cars with seasoned axles and banners bright as parrots' wings, chariots whose wheels have known victory roads, chariots with leather reins cured to softness and strength, chariots that wait now in stables under Indraprastha's sun, innocent and unaware that they are being spoken away in a room miles distant. Lost. He stakes horses, great animals from Sindhu, deep-chested and impatient, with black manes and silver bridles, teams trained to turn at a finger's pressure, stallions who would bite a lesser groom and bow only to the men they know. Lost. Elephants, armored, towering, temple bell steps, creatures who smell of earth and wet hide and hay and river water. They too are named, lost. Every throw falls the same way. Every cast seems to know where it is going before it leaves Shakuni's fingers. He handles the dice almost tenderly. He murmurs over them. His wrist flicks. Ivory falls. Fate, or something wearing fate's clothing, lands exactly where he wants. And Yudhishthira keeps playing. That is the part that hurts. Not merely that he loses, that he remains. You are close enough now to see the change in him. At first, He sat like a king performing a disagreeable obligation, then like a man offended by bad luck, then like a man determined to recover what should never have slipped. His breathing shortens, his lips press thinner. He pauses less between wagers. The distance between thought and action shrinks. Addiction does not always arrive foaming and wild. Sometimes it wears a calm face and speaks in measured tones. Vidura can bear no more. He rises from his seat with the abruptness of a snapped bowstring. His voice cuts through the hall, low at first, then gathering force. He tells Dhritarashtra that this path leads only to ruin. He warns him that a son who drags a house toward fire should be restrained, not indulged. He speaks of disaster already entering by the front gate, while everyone debates etiquette. The words strike where they should. On any other day, in any healthier world, they might have stopped everything. But Duryodhana turns on him at once. He lashes out with the meanness of a man who has prepared resentment for years and is delighted to unwrap it. He mocks Vidura's loyalty, questions his place, dismisses his warning as bitterness. It is ugly, personal, and meant to shame. Vidura stands through it. That alone is something. But Dhritarashtra does not stop his son. The blind king shifts. His fingers tighten. He says little, too little. The hall waits for command, and command does not come. So Vidura sits again. His face has gone very still. Bhishma has not moved. Only his jaw tightens once, the old warrior's one visible concession to inward pain. Drona's eyes close for a moment and open again. Kripa studies the floor. None of them step in. All of them remain. The room fills with the weight of powerful men choosing stillness. The dice go on clicking. Yudhishthira has already lost riches enough to humble ordinary kings into silence for a lifetime. Now he begins staking what cannot be counted in locked rooms. Servants, attendants, craftsmen, men and women attached to his household, named in groups, folded into property by the language of power. Shakuni wins them too. The hall cools somehow, though the afternoon heat still hangs outside. Or perhaps that chill is inside you. You feel it along your arms. Something has crossed from terrible sport into something fouler, and everyone knows it. The smell of incense is thicker now. Someone has added more, as if smoke can drape modesty over shame. Yudhishthira does not stop. He wagers lands, villages, granaries, tax rights, fields where barley bends in wind, mango groves where children climb barefoot and get shouted down by grandmothers with no idea their orchard has just become a number in a game, wells lined with stone, pastures, roads, revenue, the practical spine of kingship, lost, then cities under his sway, provinces, authority itself, peeled away piece by piece, lost. The room has fallen into that peculiar quiet where no one dares cough. Silk rustles like dry leaves. Somewhere an anklet chimes and is immediately still. You can feel the attention of every man pinned to Yudhishthira's face. They are all waiting for the same thing, for shame to wake up, for reason to enter through the side door, for somebody to laugh and declare the thing absurd and over. Nothing of the kind happens. Duryodhana leans forward now, unable to hide his pleasure. The memory of the Maya Hall is with him. You can see it even if no one names it. Every loss from Yudhishthira seems to repay some private bruise. He watches as a thirsty man watches water poured, and Shakuni, patient, gentle, merciless, keeps the rhythm. A wager, a cast, a loss, again, again. The afternoon stretches. Light inches across the floor. A fly, bold and stupid, circles one lamp, bumps the bronze rim, and keeps going. Such tiny things go on even while dynasties crack. At last, Yudhishthira says what no one has wanted to hear. He says he still possesses jewels greater than jewels, wealth beyond treasure, his brothers. The words move through the hall like cold iron. Bhima is first. Of course, Bhima is first. Mighty Bhima, mountain-shouldered, wolf-bellied, anger always close to the skin. He sits with fists already half-closed, forearms heavy with strength that could have broken this whole room apart if Dharma were simpler and brothers easier. His nostrils flare once. He turns toward Yudhishthira, disbelief and fury colliding inside him so hard you can almost hear the impact. Yet he says nothing. He has obeyed this elder brother in forest and palace, feast and danger. Obedience holds him now like chains. Yudhishthira stakes him, Shakuni casts, Bhima is lost. The sound that leaves Bhima then is not a shout, not yet, it is worse. A hard exhale, a bull's breath in winter, the sound of rage forced back down the throat, because there are still elders in the room, and because habit, terrible habit, remains stronger than outrage for one more moment. Then Arjuna. The hall seems to brace itself around his name. Arjuna, whose arrows have won kingdoms, whose hands have held divine weapons, whose fame travels faster than birds. He sits very still, beautiful and controlled and pale with something deeper than anger. He looks at Yudhishthira as if trying to see the road by which they arrived here. He too is staked. He too is lost. Nakula next. Sweet-faced Nakula, proud and radiant, beloved for beauty almost as much as skill. His mouth tightens. A flush rises under his skin. A prince who has lived with honor is being spoken of like a horse or a jeweled cup. Lost. Sahadeva after him. Wise Sahadeva, youngest and quietest, with eyes that usually see farther than others care to. He receives the blow almost without visible movement. That stillness is heartbreaking in its own way. He has the air of someone watching a door close and knowing it will not open again soon. Lost. You are in the hall when all 5 sons of Pandu are no longer free men. No trumpet sounds, no bolt from heaven strikes the roof, just the little knock of ivory on stone. That is all. The most terrible moments are often indecently small. Bhima can contain himself no longer. He bursts into speech then, raging at the madness of a man who would gamble away his own flesh and strength. He speaks like fire catching dry cane, hot and immediate. His eyes are on Yudhishthira, but his words lash the entire room. He would burn the dice if he could, burn the hand that throws them too. Arjuna calms him, or tries to, not with softness, with discipline, with the hard necessity of not shattering apart before enemies who would feast on the sight. The brothers hold to form because form is all they have left. Duryodhana drinks this in. His satisfaction has widened now. He looks from brother to brother and sees them bound without rope. The heat presses at the windows. Outside, chariot wheels can be heard in some distant courtyard. A horse snorts. Life continues, absurdly well-mannered. Yudhishthira sits amid the wreckage of his fortunes and keeps going. There is one thing left, he says, before all is truly gone. Himself. Even Shakuni pauses for half a heartbeat. Not from pity, from appetite sharpened by delay. The wager is named. Yudhishthira, king, son of Dharma, lord of Indraprastha, places his own freedom on the floor between them with the rest. You can feel everyone in the hall lean inward without moving a muscle. The dice roll. They tumble cleanly, almost prettily. They settle. Shakuni wins. There it is. Yudhishthira is no longer king of anything. No treasury, no lands, no brothers, no self. A strange hush falls, deeper than all the others. It has the shape of an ending. Men breathe again carefully, as if the catastrophe, having reached this perfect ugliness, must surely be done. It should be done. It should have ended 3 cliffs ago. Vidura's face has gone grey with grief and anger. Bhishma looks older than he did at sunrise. Drona's shoulders seem to have sunk beneath invisible weight. Dhritarashtra says nothing. Nothing. On the throne, he sits in darkness of the eyes and darkness of another kind, while the kingdom slides further from him with every unspoken word. You can smell the lamps burning lower now. Hot oil, thick smoke, dust stirred by too many shifting feet. The game should end. Instead, Duryodhana asks the question he has been saving. Not loudly, almost gently. A man might speak that way while inquiring after one last jewel forgotten in a coffer. He reminds Yudhishthira that one possession remains, one more chance to recover everything, one more throw, one more bridge out over the abyss. Draupadi. At first, the name does not seem to belong in the hall. It belongs in other places, in bright courtyards under flowering trees, in chambers fragrant with jasmine oil, in temple light, in the remembered shock of her beauty at her Swayamvara, in the ordered heart of Indraprastha, where she moved like a flame among 5 shadows. Not here, not on this floor. Yet the suggestion hangs in the air and does not vanish. You feel the whole assembly recoil without movement. Bhima turns so sharply, his ornaments strike against each other. Arjuna's face empties. Nakula and Sahadeva go white. Even Karna's eyes sharpen, waiting. Dushasana almost smiles too soon and has to swallow it back. And Yudhishthira thinks. That is the worst part. He does not leap. He does not rave. He does not look possessed. He thinks like a man doing arithmetic in a burning house. If he wins this throw, everything returns. If he wins this throw, the losses reverse. If he wins this throw, perhaps the room can wake from nightmare and pretend the edge was never crossed. Such thoughts move fast, faster than prayer, faster than warning. You can see them take him. The hall has become so quiet that a single bracelet slipping down a wrist sounds loud. Bhishma finally shifts in his seat as if to rise, then does not. Vidura shuts his eyes. Drona stares ahead. Kripa's lips part, but no word comes. The elders sit there like carved figures on temple walls, all authority and no intervention. The air is heavy, almost wet. You feel it on your skin. Then Yudhishthira says her name, Draupadi. He calls her beautiful, lucky, beloved. He describes her as though praise might soften the obscenity of what he is doing. He speaks of her dark hair, her grace, her worth. Each word lands like another stone on a grave. No one interrupts. No one overturns the board. No one seizes the dice and hurls them into the river. Shakuni nods. He lifts the ivory cubes in fingers that have done exactly what they came to do. For one suspended moment, nothing moves. You are standing in the assembly hall when the world seems to hold its breath. The incense smoke hangs straight in the still air. A bead of sweat slips down one courtier's neck and disappears into his collar. Somewhere far outside, a peacock cries. The sound is lonely and ridiculous and terrible. Then Shakuni casts. The dice strike the stone. They spin, they stop. Shakuni wins. No one speaks. No one can. The silence after that throw is so complete, it feels built, like a second hall lowered over the first. Men stare at the floor, at Shakuni's hand, at Yudhishthira's face, at nothing. Duryodhana's chest rises slowly, once, as if he has reached the center of some private wish and found it even sweeter than expected. Bhima's hands are trembling now, not with fear, with the effort of not tearing the pillars down. Arjuna sits carved from stillness. Nakula looks as though he has been struck across the mouth by an invisible hand. Sahadeva has lowered his gaze entirely. Vidura's grief is naked now, no longer hidden beneath court restraint. Bhishma, old lion of the Kurus, remains seated in the ruin of his own authority. And Yudhishthira, what can be said of him in this moment? He sits bent very slightly forward, as if listening for something only he can hear. Perhaps the echo of the dice, perhaps the sound of his own judgment breaking. The king, who would not refuse a challenge, has now wagered everything that challenge touched. Wealth, kingdom, brothers, self, wife. The afternoon does not end with thunder. It goes on. That is the cruelty. Lamps are trimmed. Shadows lengthen under chairs and along the carved bases of pillars. The hot day leans toward evening. Still, no one rises to repair what has been done. At last, motion returns to the room by way of Duryodhana. He shifts, satisfied and sharp-eyed, and begins to give orders. "Bring her," he says. "Bring Draupadi to the hall." And the whole poisoned afternoon, which should already have been impossible, takes one more step forward. Shakuni's dice have stopped rolling. But the worst part isn't the game. The worst part is what happens after the last throw. A servant is sent, not a warrior, not yet, just a servant in court livery, moving too quickly and yet not quickly enough, sandals whispering over polished stone. He leaves the hall with his face drained pale beneath its brown, because even he understands what kind of errand this is. You can almost feel the corridor air change as he goes. The Sabha behind him smells of lamp smoke, old silk, sweat held too long under jewelry and crowns. Ahead, in the women's chambers, the air is cooler. Jasmine hangs there, fresh water in copper vessels, the softer rustle of curtains instead of armor. Draupadi is not in that hall because she has not been told. Why would she be? The afternoon in Hastinapura has gone rotten by degrees, but in her chambers there is still ordinary life. Attendants fold cloth. A lamp flickers beside a carved pillar. Somewhere nearby, a bracelet taps against a tray with a tiny sound like rain. It is the sound of a world still pretending to be normal. Then the messenger arrives and breaks it. He tells her she has been won. He says Yudhishthira lost her at dice and she is summoned to the assembly. For a heartbeat, nothing moves. Then disbelief comes first, not fear. Of course it does. Some things are too obscene to enter the mind all at once. Draupadi stares at him, as if he has come in babbling river water and moonlight. Lost her, in a game. Her husband, the king, had wagered her after wagering all else? No. Her mind catches where anyone's would catch, on the order of it. That is the crack where the truth enters. She asks the servant one question, only one, quietly at first, with the precision of a blade being lifted from velvet. Had Yudhishthira lost himself before staking her, or after? Because if he had already lost himself, then he no longer possessed even his own freedom. And if he had no freedom, by what right could he wager another? The servant stands there holding that question like a pot too hot to touch. He has no answer, so he is sent back with it. And now you're in the hall again, where the afternoon has become something heavy and airless. The lamps burn brighter because daylight is slipping away. Their smoke curls up toward the painted rafters. Somewhere, a fly circles and circles, drunk on heat. The gold inlay on the floor catches the firelight and glows like trapped sunset. The servant kneels and repeats Draupadi's words. That question enters the assembly and does not merely sound, it lands. You can feel it go through the room, through the carved benches, through the old men wrapped in white, through princes with rings on every finger, through every person who was hoping this could still be called a game. Did he lose himself first? Then what did he have left to stake? Bhishma hears it. Of course, he hears it. No one in that room has spent longer thinking about vows, law, duty, property, kingship, obedience. The old warrior sits straight-backed beneath all his white hair, his face carved by years and grief and discipline. He has stood in battle against storms of arrows. He has taken terrible oaths and kept them. But this question is different. It asks him to choose between law and justice in a room where law has already been twisted into a rope. His mouth opens. It closes. He says that Dharma is subtle, that the ways of ownership and duty are hard to trace when a man has gambled away himself. He says a wife is under her husband's authority, and yet a man who has lost his own liberty has little authority left. He circles the matter and never reaches shore. It is one of the saddest things you will ever see. The greatest elder in the room, and even he cannot make the room stand up. Drona looks downward toward the floor that reflects the lamps in soft, broken points. Creeper's fingers tighten over his knee. Vidura's face has gone hard, with a grief so deep it almost looks like disgust. The Pandavas themselves sit stripped of rank and power, like statues someone has toppled but not yet carried away. You are there when the silence grows unbearable. Silence has a sound in a royal hall, a pressure, silk brushing marble, someone swallowing, the tiny metal click of a bracelet against a thrown arm. Outside, very faintly, a conch somewhere in the city, announcing evening worship as if the gods have not noticed what men are doing indoors. Then one young voice cuts across the stillness. Vikarna, not Bhishma, not Drona, not Dhritarashtra, one of the Kaurava brothers, younger, less feared, easier to ignore. And yet, he speaks where the great ones fail. He says what many in the room are already feeling with their bones. He says Draupadi was not rightly won. He says Yudhishthira had already lost himself. He says the wager was corrupted from the beginning. For a brief instant, the whole almost remembers what honor is. Murmurs rise, heads lift, breath returns. Then Karna stands, and warmth drains out of the room again. He throws his scorn at Vikarna first, dismissing him as a child, speaking beyond his understanding. Then he turns it all toward Draupadi. His words are cruel, sharpened by old bitterness and loyalty to Duryodhana. He says she has no standing to protest. He says she has been won. He says she should be treated like what the game has made her. Duryodhana likes that very much. He leans back, heavy with triumph, one hand on his thigh, and gives the next order. Not the servant this time. Dushasana. That is when the shape of the afternoon changes from shame to violation. You can almost hear the hall recoil, though no one moves. Dushasana rises with the eagerness of a man too happy to obey something vile. He strides out of the assembly, ornaments clinking at his wrists, anklets dull against the stone. He smells of wine and dust and the sour heat of excitement. In the women's quarters, the air must have changed before he entered. Sometimes, danger has a footfall of its own. Draupadi refuses again. She says she will not come to a hall full of elders in such a condition, dragged there on the strength of a wager that may not even stand. She sends the question once more. Was she lost fairly or not? Let the men in the court answer that before they summon her like property from a storeroom. Dushasana has no interest in questions. He seizes her. The scene comes to you in fragments because the mind protects itself that way. The sharp cry of startled attendants, the crash of a vessel overturned, water spreading cold over red stone, the smell of jasmine crushed under feet, a curtain torn from one ring and hanging crooked, Draupadi struggling to hold her garment with one hand while the other reaches for a pillar, a doorway, anything. And then the hair. He takes her by the hair. That beautiful, dark hair, once perfumed and braided in a palace, bright with festival lamps, now caught in a brute fist. When he drags her into the assembly, the whole hall sees it. You see it too. Her single cloth is disordered from the struggle. Her eyes are blazing, not broken. Her hair has come loose around her shoulders. She is breathing hard, like someone who has run through fire and arrived furious that the fire still exists. The hall should have shattered from shame. It does not. That is part of the horror. She stands there among kings and elders and teachers, dragged by the hair into public view, and still she is the most composed person in the room. The smell has changed again now. Sweat, lamp oil, fear. There is a storm feeling in the air, though the sky outside has not yet broken. You can feel the coolness of the stone through the soles of your feet and the heat of everyone's humiliation pressing down from above. Draupadi asks her question again, not weeping, not begging, demanding judgment. If a man has already lost himself, did he have any right left to wager his wife? She asks the assembly to answer. She asks the elders, the learned, the keepers of law, whether she is slave or queen. She asks them in front of everyone. No one wants this question, because once it is spoken aloud, every silence becomes a choice. Bhishma gives her no comfort. He tells her again that Dharma is difficult, tangled, hard to read when greed and power and oath are knotted together. Drona says nothing. Kripa says nothing. Dhritarashtra, blind on his throne, says nothing. His fingers grip the arms of his seat, but he does not stop his son. Vidura does. At least he tries. He warns the king in words hot enough to blister. He says this path ends in ruin. He says a jackal has been raised in the royal house, and everyone is pretending not to hear it howl. He pleads for restraint, for sanity, for someone to remember that a kingdom can break in a single evening. But Duryodhana is well past restraint, and he does a thing so ugly that even now it hangs in the air of this tale like smoke. He gestures toward his thigh, a taunt, an invitation, a deliberate insult hurled at Draupadi in the middle of the court. Bhima lurches like a storm-struck tree. If not for the bondage of the game, if not for Yudhishthira's hand, or Arjuna's look, or sheer fate itself, the hall might have burst then and there. Bhima's breath comes through his teeth. His arms, thick as temple pillars, are shaking. He makes a vow in that moment so dark and so steady that it seems to harden the air. He swears he will one day break that thigh. The words settle in the room, and wait for their time. But Duryodhana is not done. Karna, still fierce with contempt, urges that the Pandavas' upper garments be stripped away, and that Draupadi too be deprived of hers. If they are slaves, let them wear the condition plainly. That is the cruelty he favors, public, formal, legal on its surface, and rotten all the way through. The Pandavas remove their outer cloths. That alone is humiliation enough to make the earth turn its face away. Then Dushasana steps toward Draupadi. You can feel the whole hall stop breathing. Not metaphorically, not poetically, actually stop. The lamps hiss. Somewhere outside, wind stirs through a corridor and brings in the scent of dust, as if evening has finally remembered the earth. Draupadi looks from face to face and finds no human help coming, not from husbands bound by loss, not from elders bound by caution, not from the king bound by his own weakness. So she lets go of the last hope in men and reaches elsewhere. Her prayer rises from the center of her, not loud at first, but absolute. She calls to Krishna, to Govinda, to the one who sees when no one in a royal hall will see. She asks to be rescued from this sea of Kauravas. The deep words pour out of her like water released from a dam long under strain. Dushasana pulls. The cloth comes away in his hands, and another is there. He pulls again, another, again, another. At first, people think it is some trick of layering, some accident of drape and fold. But the heap on the floor keeps growing, silk after silk, cloth after cloth, winding out in color after color, red, gold, blue, white, saffron, green dark as river reeds, pale as moonlit milk. The pile spreads over the floor like a small fabric mountain at Dushasana's feet. He keeps dragging. The cloth keeps coming. You sit in that hall and watch the impossible become steady. That is the strange mercy of it. Not thunder, not blinding fire, no crashing of pillars. Just cloth, endless cloth, grace arriving in the form most needed, covering what men would uncover, refusing to run out. Dushasana's breath grows ragged. His shoulders strain. Sweat darkens his clothes. The bracelets on his arms jolt and clatter as he tugs. His face goes red with effort, then dull with disbelief. He gathers and hauls and gathers and hauls, and still the sari continues without end. The heap beside him grows so large, attendants must step back from it. Colors spill across the crystal floor, over carved borders, against the feet of kings. It is almost beautiful, which feels unbearable, because beauty should not have to arrive as defense in a room full of men. At last, Dushasana falters. His strength gives out before the cloth does. He stumbles back, exhausted, breathing like a bellows, his hands empty and yet not finished with failure. Draupadi stands untouched in her dignity, wrapped and re-wrapped by an infinity no hand in that hall can master. Something breaks then, not in her, in the room, the certainty of the wicked, the lazy comfort of the silent, the illusion that this can go on forever. Omens begin to move through the palace. The old stories always say palaces know before kings do, and tonight it feels true. Jackals cry. Harsh bird calls split the evening. Somewhere sacred fire sputters the wrong way. A wind blows through corridors that should have been still. The horses in their stalls stamp and toss their heads. The elephants rumble low, uneasy, as if they smell a storm no human can yet see. Even Dhritarashtra feels it. Blind he may be, but not deaf to dread. The king has sat through too much already, telling himself the next moment would not be worse. Now the omens crowd him from every side. Gandhari's warning reaches him. Vidura's warning rings in his ears. The hall itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for his choice. At last, he speaks. Too late, of course, but at last. His voice is strained, old suddenly, stripped of kingly ease. He calls Draupadi blessed among women and asks her to choose a boon. It is a desperate move, half repentance, half fear. A man trying to pour water on a palace already smoking. Draupadi does not ask for ornaments. She does not ask for vengeance. She asks first for Yudhishthira to be freed. That is her first boon. The husband who lost her, the king who failed her, the man whose weakness has brought her into this hall. She asks that he not remain a slave. It is almost too much grace to look at directly. Dhritarashtra grants it. He offers another boon. Again she chooses not for herself. She asks that Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva also be freed, with their weapons and warrior honor restored. No chains on them, no slave mark upon the sons of Pandu. Granted. The old king, relieved and frightened and eager to end what he has permitted, offers a third boon. Draupadi refuses it. Two are enough, she says. Greed should not touch righteousness. She will not ask beyond what is needed. You can feel the room shift around her. She has more command in that moment than anyone seated on a throne. The Pandavas are released. Their freedom returns like circulation to a numbed limb. Not joy, not yet, just the first painful awareness of how much has been lost. Cloth is brought, breath returns. The edge of catastrophe seems, for one impossible instant, to draw back. The game, it appears, has been undone. The hall should empty then. Everyone should go home in shame. The lamps should be extinguished. The floors should be washed with water and herbs. The old men should spend the night staring into darkness, wondering when they became so small. But the poisoned afternoon has one more breath left in it. Shakuni is still there. Of course he is, soft-voiced, patient, dry-eyed. He does not rage. Men like him never need to. He leans toward Duryodhana and speaks low enough that only a few nearest hear the first murmur. Yet the effect travels quickly. You see it in Duryodhana's face before you hear the proposal. There is fresh light in his eyes, hungry and thin. One more game, that is all. Not for wealth this time. Not for jewels, armies, servants, palaces. Those have already shown what they can do. This time, the stake will be exile. 12 years in the forest, 1 year hidden, unrecognized. If discovered in that final year, the whole punishment begins again. It is a trap dressed in rules, and everyone in the hall knows it. You can smell the dread return as sharply as if someone overturned a jar of bitter oil. Vidura closes his eyes. Bhima's jaw sets so hard, the muscle jumps in his cheek. Arjuna goes very still again, that dangerous stillness of a drawn bow, not yet released. Draupadi's face changes, not into fear, but into the cold understanding that the room has learned nothing. Dhritarashtra should refuse. He should stand inside the little shred of courage he found and keep standing there. But Duryodhana presses, Shakuni waits, and the blind king, who cannot hold his son back any more than he can hold back nightfall, yields again. Outside, evening has fully come. The city lamps are being lit one by one. Ghee flames blink alive in balconies and shrines. The air beyond the hall carries cooking smoke, damp earth, the first cooler breath after a punishing day. Ordinary people in Hastinapura are washing their hands, feeding children, saying prayers, unaware that inside the royal court, one disaster has somehow found room to become another. You are in the hall as the challenge is spoken. Again. And after everything, after the question no one could answer, after the miracle no one could deny, after the boons, the shame, the omens, Yudhishthira hears it, the invitation, the terms, the old snare disguised as honor, and the night opens before them like a forest road. And because one catastrophe is never enough when pride is involved, they sit down to play again. The hall has changed, not in its pillars or carved beams or bright lamps trembling in bronze bowls. All that is the same, but the air is not. Before, there had been the fever of gambling, the ugly thrill of watching a rich man slide toward ruin. Now there is only exhaustion, shame, the stale smell of sweat trapped under silk, burnt ghee, wilted garlands, a room that has already seen too much and somehow is about to see more. No one shifts comfortably now. Even the courtiers who enjoy other people's misfortune look thin around the mouth. The elders sit as if their bones are heavier than before. Bhishma's face might as well be carved from old stone. Drona stares ahead. Vidura looks like a man who has swallowed smoke. And in the middle of it, Shakuni is calm. Of course he is. His fingers move over the ivory dice as lovingly as a musician checking a favorite instrument. Little cubes, smooth, innocent-looking, the sort of thing a child could lose under a carpet. It is almost insulting how small they are, kingdoms overturned by something that would fit in a closed fist. Duryodhana does not bother pretending kindness now. That thin layer has burned away. He wants one thing only, that the Pandavas gone, broken, removed from sight. He wants the room itself to confirm what he could not bear to feel in Indraprastha. Yudhishthira hears the terms. 12 years in the forest, 1 year hidden, unrecognized, living in disguise. If discovered in that final year, the punishment begins again. Simple, precise, cruel in the neat way only court people can manage. You are standing close enough to see Yudhishthira's face when he accepts. No outburst, no argument, just that terrible stillness of a man stepping onto a road he knows leads into darkness. The heat from the lamps touches one side of his cheek. The other remains in shadow. Bhima turns toward him sharply. For one instant, you think he might refuse for all of them, might sweep the dice from Shakuni's hand and split the whole polished floor with his fury. He does not. That is the misery of this family. Everyone is strong enough to break mountains. No one can break the moment. The throw comes quickly. No long procession of wagers this time. No slow peeling away of treasures and armies and names. The cruelty is cleaner now. One cast to decide 13 years. One cast because everyone understands the machine already and still feeds themselves into it. Shakuni rolls. The dice strike the floor with that small dry sound. Ivory on crystal. A sound you know too well now. He announces the result before the cubes have even settled in your mind. His smile is slight, almost lazy. Yudhishthira has lost. That is all. No thunder, no conch, no collapsing roof. Just a room full of people breathing in and not quite breathing out. The Pandavas are exiles. For a moment, the silence is so complete, you can hear the wick of a lamp sputter. Somewhere in the back of the hall, a bracelet clinks against stone because a woman's hand has begun to shake. Outside, far beyond the walls, a dog barks in the street and is answered by another. Then sound returns. Soft first, silk moving, sandals scraping, the whisper of people looking at one another without wanting to. Hastinapura has done it. The royal court has thrown out the sons of Pandu like unwanted guests after a feast. You can smell night drifting in through the high windows now, carrying dust and cooking fires and river damp. Draupadi does not weep. That is important. Remember it. She stands there, with her dark hair still loose over her shoulders, unbraided, heavy as a storm cloud. The cloth around her is in place by divine mercy, but her humiliation has not vanished with the miracle. It stands beside her like another presence, and yet she is upright, steady, too steady for this room. When she speaks, the sound is low and clear. She says her hair will remain unbound until the day it is washed in Dushasana's blood. No one laughs at that. No one mistakes it for a woman's grief spoken wildly. Her voice is too level for that. You feel the words pass through the hall like a cold wind through a row of lamps. Hair is no small thing here. A queen's braid is honor, order, dignity, gathered and fastened. To leave it loose is to leave the wound visible. Dushasana shifts where he stands, just a little. For the first time that day, he looks less certain of himself. Bhima hears her vow, and something in him hardens beyond anger. Anger is hot, quick, bright. This is different. This is iron lowered into water. He swears before the assembly that he will tear open Dushasana's chest in battle and drink his blood, and that he will one day break Duryodhana's thigh for the insult that still hangs in this hall like poison. The words are dreadful, but Bhima does not shout them. That is what makes them worse. He speaks through clenched teeth, each promise shaped carefully, as if he is laying stones one by one on a funeral ground. Even the reckless men in the assembly go pale. A vow from Bhima is not decoration. It is weather moving toward you from far away. You may not feel the rain yet. It is already coming. Arjuna says less. He does not need many words. He stands beside his elder brother, eyes lowered for a moment, then raised again. The stillness around him feels like a bowstring drawn and held. Nakula and Sahadeva, beautiful even in misery, stand with the dazed brightness of men who have watched the world tilt too quickly. You are there when they remove their ornaments. That part goes slowly. Armlets unclasped, gemmed necklaces lifted away, rings eased from fingers, gold set aside piece by piece, royal silk exchanged for bark cloth and deerskin. The sound is intimate and unbearable. The tiny chime of jewelry laid down for the last time, the rough whisper of coarse fabric pulled over skin, used to linen and softness. The smell changes too. Perfume fades, dust rises, bark cloth carries the dry scent of wood and sun. Forest life before the forest even begins. Bhima looks absurd in ascetic clothing, like a thundercloud stuffed into a hermit's hut. There is almost something darkly funny in it. If a man built to uproot trees is forced into bark and sandals, the bark is the thing in danger, but no one smiles. Not really. Yudhishthira dresses first and without complaint. That hurts most of all. He strips himself of kingship with the same grave discipline with which he once wore it. No bitterness on his face, no plea. You want him to rage just once, to say that the hall is rotten, the game false, the whole thing a disgrace to kings. Instead, he accepts the exile as if accepting a ritual vow. Draupadi wraps herself for the road. Her hair remains loose. It catches lamplight in dark copper streaks as she turns. You can almost feel its weight against your own back, warm from the hall, carrying the smell of smoke and jasmine oil and the salt of a terrible day. Vidura cannot bear it any longer. He comes as close as he dares and speaks with all the tenderness the room has denied these people. He tells them what provisions can be arranged. He grieves openly, though in the restrained way of older men who learned long ago to keep their sorrow behind their teeth. He looks especially at Kunti's sons, and in that look there is apology for an entire city. Dhritarashtra says things too. Too late, of course. His blind face turns this way and that, listening for reactions he cannot see. He speaks of fate, of duty, of the conditions of the wager, of hopes for safe return. Words, dry leaves in a courtyard. They skitter and go nowhere. The king could have stopped this. That truth sits in the room like an unwelcome guest who refuses to leave. Gandhari is silent, veiled, rigid, and Duryodhana watches. He watches them put on bark cloth. He watches Draupadi with her unbound hair. He watches Bhima with that furnace in his chest. Victory has reached his hand at last, and still it does not make his face peaceful. Some hungers are like sea water. The more they drink, the worse they burn. Then it is time. The Pandavas turn from the hall. You turn with them. The corridors of Hastinapura seem longer now. Torches gutter in brackets along the walls. Servants flatten themselves against carved pillars as the exiles pass. Some lower their eyes in shame. Some cry quietly. Some simply stare because history is going by in bark garments and no one knows what to do with their hands. Your feet feel the cool stone first, then warmer patches where the day's heat still lingers. The palace smells of old incense, lamp smoke, polished wood, and the faint medicinal scent of lotus paste crushed under someone's sandal. Somewhere far off, a conch sounds for evening worship. It comes thin and lonely through the courtyards. Outside the great doors, the night has deepened. The sky over Hastinapura is indigo, with one early star caught above the palace roof. Oil lamps flicker in niches and gateways. The city beyond is alive with rumor already. News runs faster than horses in a place like this. By the time the Pandavas reach the outer road, half the city knows. People gather, not in one roaring crowd, in clusters, at corners, on rooftops, behind latticed windows, a potter with clay still drying on his forearms, women holding sleeping children against their hips, boys too young to understand and old enough to remember, merchants in loosened turbans, old men leaning on canes, palace maids with wet hair from evening baths, their bracelets hushed against their wrists. You can feel their eyes. Some bow their heads, some begin to weep, some call blessings under their breath, not loudly. No one wants the prince's anger turned on them too. That is another shame of the night. Grief with one hand over its own mouth. The Pandavas walk. No chariots, no royal umbrellas, no drums. Dust rises around their feet in soft pale clouds. It clings to the hem of Draupadi's garment. It settles on Bhima's ankles. It powders Arjuna's dark hair at the temples. The road out of Hastinapura is packed earth still warm from the day, and you feel that stored heat breathing upward through your sandals. This is the moment. You are leaving with them. Behind you, the city gates tower under torchlight, iron-bound and massive. Guards stand stiff at their posts, doing the useless work of men who arrive after the wound. The hinges groan as the gates begin to close for the night. Slow, heavy, final. The sound follows them down the road. Wood, iron, distance. A kingdom shutting its mouth. Bhima turns once, only once. He looks back toward the walls, and his face in torchlight is something every enemy should fear. Not wildness, not madness, memory. He is storing this night exactly as it is: the smell of dust, the sting of public shame, the sight of his wife walking barefoot with her hair undone. He will carry it for years. He will feed it like banked fire. Arjuna lays a hand briefly on his arm, enough to keep him moving. Nakula and Sahadeva walk close to Draupadi, one on either side when the road narrows. Yudhishthira leads because he must. His shoulders are straight. The bark cloth sits harsh against his skin. The moon catches along the line of his jaw, and for the first time, he looks not like a king, but like a pilgrim who has chosen a very hard shrine. The city does not sleep soon that night. Long after the exiles have passed beyond the outer gardens, beyond the wells and fig trees and shrine stones, people remain at windows. They speak in murmurs. They ask each other how this happened, though they know exactly how. A game, a silence, a father too weak to deny a son. Elders who could not turn courage into action. Citizens who watched and did not storm the hall. Everyone has a reason. None of the reasons feel clean. Back in the palace, lamps still burn low in the assembly chamber. The dice are put away. Imagine that. After all this, they are simply gathered up and tucked into some box or pouch, harmless as pebbles. The floor is swept. The seats are straightened. Someone clears the wilted flowers. Servants move quietly through the wreckage of royal dignity with trays and cloths and lowered heads. Palaces are very good at pretending nothing happened. But the air remembers. In the women's chambers, in the guard posts, in the kitchens, where rice has gone cold in bronze pots. People are still whispering about the queen with unbound hair, about Bhima's voice, about the look on Vidura's face, about omens and vows, and the feeling that the kingdom has sent something precious into the forest and will not get peace in return. Far down the road, the Pandavas keep walking. The night wind touches their faces at last, cooler now, scented with neem leaves and dry grass and the faint silver smell of the river somewhere beyond the dark. Crickets begin their small, endless music. Sand shifts underfoot. A jackal calls from the scrub, thin and sharp. Draupadi does not cover her hair. It moves behind her with each step, dark as monsoon water, and Hastinapura, glittering behind them with all its towers and lamps and carved gates, looks for one breath like the Maya Sabha all over again. Solid, grand, impossible to challenge, and made of illusion. The night deepens. The road stretches on behind them. And after all of that, the palace, the laughter, the dice, the silence of good men, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? Because this part matters. Not the glitter of the hall, not even the shock of that terrible afternoon, though you can still hear the dice if you listen closely enough. What matters is what all of it adds up to. Why this memory was carried for centuries, from firelight to firelight, from one human voice to another. The first warning comes with beauty. The Maya Sabha is dazzling. Crystal, gold, polished stone, cool corridors that glow like moonlight caught indoors. You can almost feel it again under your bare feet. That strange, smooth floor, cold as river water, shining so brightly it tricks the eye. It is a marvel. It is also the first illusion. That is where Maya enters so quietly. Maya is often spoken of as illusion, but not in the simple sense of a cheap trick. It is the power of appearances, the surface that convinces you it is the whole truth. Water that looks like stone, stone that looks like water, a palace that seems like perfect victory, a kingdom that feels secure because it is beautiful. A family that still calls itself a family, while poison is already in the cooking pot. That hall teaches something hard and necessary. Splendor does not save you. Power does not save you. Even divine favor, if you wear it carelessly, can stir envy in the wrong heart. The Pandavas did not build the palace to destroy themselves. Of course not. They built it to honor their rise, to make visible their legitimacy, their prosperity, their astonishing good fortune. But the very thing that proved their greatness also became the spark that lit Duryodhana's rage. And that matters because life often breaks this way. Not with obvious evil marching through the front gate, with wounded pride. You can still see him there if you want to. Silk-soaked, jaw-tight, trying to recover dignity while servants look away too carefully. It would almost be funny if it were not so dangerous. A man slipping into a pool should not lead to a war. And yet, shame is rarely small inside the person carrying it. Pride is fragile, much more fragile than it looks. Duryodhana could have laughed at himself. He could have gone home irritated and let the feeling pass like summer heat. Instead, he fed it. He sat with it. He polished it. He turned embarrassment into grievance, and grievance into purpose. That is karma beginning to move through their lives. Not karma as a reward and punishment machine. Not some neat little cosmic ledger where one bad thought earns one exact consequence. Karma is more tangled than that. It is action setting, more action in motion. It is the way an insult grows teeth if you keep feeding it. It is the way one choice opens the road to 10 more. Duryodhana's humiliation became Shakuni's opportunity. And then there is Shakuni, quiet and patient and dangerous in a different way. The most dangerous person in a kingdom is not always the loudest one. Sometimes it is the patient one, the one who waits with soft hands and a calm voice, the one who understands exactly where another person is weakest and never hurries the knife. No sword, no army at the gate, just an invitation. That is what makes the assembly hall so chilling. So much devastation comes dressed in courtesy. Sandalwood smoke in the air, formal greetings, silk rustling, elders seated in order, a game announced as friendly. You could almost miss the trap if you arrived late. And that false gentleness matters too. Dharma does not always arrive roaring. Sometimes it sits down politely and asks if you would care to play. Then there is Yudhishthira. This hurts because he is not a fool. He is not cruel. He is not a villain waiting to reveal himself. He is a man devoted to Dharma, and still he falls. That is one of the bravest things this epic says. Dharma is not a medal you win and wear forever. It is not a permanent glow around the head. It is a choice, and then another choice, and then another. Especially when your mind is clouded, your pride is touched, and everyone is watching. Yudhishthira knew the game was dangerous. He knew Shakuni was skilled. He knew, somewhere inside himself, that he should not continue. But his duty as he understood it, his obligation not to refuse a challenge, not to seem weak, not to step outside the code, became tangled up with compulsion. That is why this part feels so human. Even the righteous have cracks in them. Sometimes the crack is vanity, sometimes anger, sometimes the desperate need to keep going because stopping would mean admitting you should never have begun. You can feel the heat of that hall again when you think of it. The dry mouth, the heavy air, the unbearable momentum. One throw more, then another. Gold, kingdom, brothers, self. Then at last, the unthinkable. And that is what stays with you here. Dharma without self-mastery can fail at the worst possible moment. And then Draupadi changes the whole room. Everyone else is trapped inside power, habit, fear, rank. She cuts through all of it with one clear question. If he had already lost himself, how could he stake her afterward? In that moment, she does something extraordinary. She speaks Dharma aloud when the men charged with protecting it cannot. That is her greatness. Not only that she was wronged, not only that she endured, but that in the center of humiliation, she remained intellectually clear, morally clear, fierce enough to demand truth from a room built to avoid it. Justice does not disappear because powerful people refuse to name it. That is what her question makes impossible to ignore. Bhishma cannot answer. Drona does not answer. Kripa does not answer. Dhritarashtra delays. The elders know they are standing on rotten ground, and still they do not move quickly enough. Their silence is one of the deepest wounds in the whole epic, because silence is not empty. Silence does something. It permits, it shelters, it lengthens the life of evil by a few more terrible minutes, and sometimes a few minutes is all disaster needs. And that is one of the hardest truths in the whole hall. Goodness without courage is too weak to protect anyone. Wisdom that trembles and sits still is not enough. Age, reputation, vows, learning, none of these matter if, at the crucial moment, you cannot rise. You can almost hear the hall in that silence. No birds, no music, just breath, cloth, and shame. That is why the miracle of endless cloth feels so necessary. Grace enters where human beings have failed. Draupadi reaches beyond the court because the court has abandoned her. And help comes, not to erase what happened, not to pretend the insult never occurred, but to say that Dharma is greater than the men who failed it that day. The assembly could not protect her honor. The divine did. There is comfort in that, and also sorrow, because the rescue does not undo the crime. The exile still comes, the vows still stand, the wheel still turns, and under all of this, one deeper current keeps moving. This book is about illusion, yes, but not only in shining floors and tricky architecture. The biggest illusion in the hall is the belief that actions can be contained, that one game can remain just a game, that one insult can stay private, that one woman's humiliation will not shake a kingdom, that elders can remain neutral, that a prince can feed envy and still sleep in peace, that Dharma can be postponed until tomorrow. It cannot. Everything ripples. That is karma again, living karma, collective karma. One person throws the dice, but an entire dynasty pays. And so the storytellers preserved this long sorrow, not merely for grief, and not merely for spectacle. They preserved it as warning. They wanted you to feel how civilizations begin to crack, not only through open wickedness, but through pride, weakness, delay, attachment, and the refusal to stop a wrong when it is still small enough to stop. Good people stay silent. Proud people refuse to lose. Patient malice waits. And then the world changes in an afternoon. But there is one more thing they wanted to leave you with, and it is gentler than all the rest. Dharma may fail in a room full of kings, but it does not vanish. It survives in Draupadi's question, in Vidura's protest, in Vikarna speaking up while older men looked away, in the terrible vows that remember an outrage must one day be answered, in the ache you feel listening to it, knowing this should not have happened. That ache matters. It means the inner compass still works. So, when you close this part of the Mahabharata, You're not meant to feel only horror. You're meant to feel recognition, to understand that righteousness is not automatic, that illusion is powerful, that pride is expensive, and that silence always has a cost, but also to understand that truth can still be spoken in the darkest room, and once spoken, it does not disappear. The dice said more than victory and loss. They said that a kingdom had mistaken appearance for order. They said that Dharma had been tested and found trembling. They said that the forest road was now inevitable. And they said, very softly, that what was done in that hall would one day return, not quickly, but surely, like footsteps heard long before dawn. So after all of that, what remains is not only outrage, it is clarity. A beautiful hall can hide danger. A righteous man can fail. Great elders can go silent when speech is needed most. And still, Dharma does not disappear. It survives in the one voice that keeps telling the truth, in the one hand that refuses cruelty, in the one heart that knows this should never have happened. That is the comfort here, if there is one. The story does not leave the wound unanswered. It carries the wound forward until justice meets it on the road ahead. The palace still stands. The dice have stopped rolling, but one image remains. Draupadi walks north with her hair unbound. It moves against her back like a dark banner, heavy and loose, catching the late light. Dust clings to the hem of her garment. The road out of Hastinapura is dry, pale, and rutted by cartwheels. Each step lifts a little powder into the air, and the whole procession wears it before long, on ankles, on sandals, on the edge of cloth, on the skin. You stand there long enough to watch them become travelers. Not kings now, not a queen in a jeweled hall, just 6 figures going into the forest heat, followed by a few loyal hearts who cannot bear to turn away. Yudhishthira walks first, shoulders bent under a weight no one can see. Bhima moves like a storm forced into human shape. Arjuna says very little. Nakula and Sahadeva keep close, their faces still and bright as drawn blades. And Draupadi walks among them, silent. Silent, but not emptied. The city walls remain behind them, red in the sinking sun. On the parapets and rooftops, people still watch. Some press cloths to their mouths. Some lower their eyes. Some stare as if they can look hard enough to pull time backward. But time is stubborn. It does not reverse for grief. A wind comes over the road. It smells of warm dust, neem leaves, distant cooking fires, and the faint wet scent of river mud somewhere far off. It touches Draupadi's loose hair and lifts it for a moment. Then it falls again across her shoulders. That hair matters. It should have been perfumed and braided, jeweled and cared for by gentle hands. Instead, it hangs free, carrying a vow with it. You can almost feel the force of that promise moving beside her like another companion. Not loud, not theatrical, just steady. The kind of vow that does not forget. Ahead, the forest waits. At this hour, it looks almost kind. Long shadows under sal trees, green darkening toward blue, bird calls settling for the evening, monkeys shifting, somewhere high in the branches, full of opinions no one asked for. The world beyond the road does not care about court games. It has its own business, roots drinking, insects singing, leaves turning toward whatever light remains, and so they go to it. The sons of Pandu, born for thrones and chariots and white parasols, now walking into a life of bark garments, campfire smoke, and hard ground. There is something almost strange in how quickly splendor falls away. One day crystal halls, the next day forest paths, and a sleeping mat. Silk 1 week, rough cloth the next. Humans are very proud of their arrangements. The forest, naturally, is impressed by none of them. You can feel the evening cool at last, beginning to rise from the earth. It touches the skin after a punishing day. It carries the sound of sandals on dirt, the rattle of a bow against a warrior's back, the soft chime of ornaments not yet given up. A conch does not sound. No herald announces them. No servant runs ahead with lamps, only footsteps. Behind them, in Hastinapura, the great hall grows dim. Servants move quietly now. Oil lamps are trimmed. The smell inside is sandalwood, old stone, burnt wick, and something heavier that no incense can sweeten. Regret has no fragrance of its own, but if it did, perhaps it would smell like this, rich palace air gone stale after a terrible afternoon. Dhritarashtra sits where kings sit, blind eyes, old hands resting on carved arms worn smooth by years. Around him, the hall that heard everything has fallen almost still. The dice are gathered away. The courtiers speak in lowered voices. Somewhere far down a corridor, silk rustles, then fades. Somewhere else, metal rings softly as a guard shifts his spear. And the old king asks what his sons have done today. He asks it too late. He asks it knowing. That is the sorrow of it. Not knowing. Knowing and allowing the day to happen anyway. The question drifts out into the hall and hangs there with the lamp smoke. No answer can make it smaller. No answer can turn the chariot around on the northern road. Outside the palace, night comes slowly. Bats flicker through the darkening air above the courtyards. The last heat leaves the stone step by step. A dog circles twice and lies down near a gatehouse. In the women's chambers, someone weeps very quietly. In another room, someone says nothing at all. The city settles, but it does not rest. Farther out, beyond the walls, the Pandavas reach the first edge of the trees. The forest receives them in shadow. The light there is green and gold for a moment, then softer, then gone. Dry leaves give underfoot with a hush. The air changes, cooler, damper, full of bark, earth, crushed grass, wild jasmine somewhere unseen. 1,000 evening sounds begin at once. Crickets, frogs, a distant owl calling from deeper in the woods. You walk with them just a little farther. You feel the day finally leaving your skin. You hear the city behind you disappear. You see Draupadi's hair, still loose, still dark, still moving with each step as if the whole road remembers. 13 years wait ahead. So does much else. But not tonight. Tonight, there is only the first camp, the first small fire, the first drink of forest water, cupped in tired hands. Tonight, there is the long breath after catastrophe. Tonight, there are stars appearing one by one above the trees, indifferent and bright, and somewhere, faint now, almost gone, as if from a room very far away, comes the memory of Ivory striking stone. Then, even that fades. Only the road, only the trees, only the night wind moving through unbound hair. And in that deepening dark, the great hall of illusion empties at last, while the forest keeps its silence and the exiles walk on.